And we're back, and it's COMP308, Emerging Technologies, Lesson 5, Week 5, Part 3, right? And we're talking about this problem that we had earlier when we tried to get our file to be read, which is an XML file that we're trying to read with AJAX, okay? And we're going to try and use AJAX, actually, to embed this stuff, right? This stuff right here, right, inside of our, we're not even getting here if you notice. Our console.log doesn't show that we've read. We're not getting the proper status. And we're using this get open as an example to kind of access everything. Okay, that's the one piece. Yes? Sure.
Inside the for loop, do we need to put semicolon at the end?
Inside which for loop? Where? Here?
Yeah, at the very end of the statement. Where we
Here?
add things together? No. Where we have break. Oh,
Here?
there is one. Okay.
I like your thinking. Yeah, but remember, do we need semicolons for JavaScript? We don't need them. If you left JavaScript semicolons out of all the JavaScript, still run, right? If it was running. Here's the issue. One of the issues I can see right away. We're checking on ready state, right? And our on ready state function, right, is an event handler. Well, we can't do this, right? Because when we're waiting for everything to be on ready in order for us to kick off this anonymous function, right? So that's the first thing. We made a new HTTP request, and we're waiting for the state, our state change, to hit ready, right? Are we ever ready? That's the question. So let's take a look at online solutions and see if we can find anything. And the first thing that I would check, if I was going to say, is something like this. Reading, is this the right thing to do? XML with JavaScript, right? That's the first thing I would put in there, reading XML with JavaScript. W3 Schools, in the first place, you might want to check. They're a pretty good source for this kind of stuff, right? How do we do that? So let's click and see if there's anything in here. And of course, there's accessing nodes, and it gives us a little bit of, here's our get element by tag name. And again, it says get element by tag name returns all elements with a specific tag name. This is great, but it doesn't give us a full example until we get down here, right? So here's var XML doc. This is what we did. Load XML doc. Oh, our load XML doc, right, is equal to this book. And we do it up here, our loading, right? That's interesting. We didn't do a send request the way we do it here. This is a different kind of way of doing it, right? By the way, if you ever click try it yourself, right? What does it do? It gives you an online editor to try it out, right? Not bad. What was that?
You can actually test things.
Test things almost like a little playground without actually creating a project and everything else. That's what it does, right? So again, this is cool. We want to go and we want to skip through all this stuff one at a time. And if you notice, this does a document.write, which is not what we want to do, right? A document.write. Here's the other question. How do we know? We haven't gone in there. For sure, our status is incorrect. But this doesn't even check for status. How come we're checking our responses to 204, but this isn't checking that at all? Is this a complete example, is my question, right? Here's a traversing nodes thing, which is what we were trying to do with our for loop anyway, right? And here's this idea of XML document element.child nodes, where we're traversing the nodes and kind of writing them out. That's the same kind of process as what we did before. But we're not even getting there. We're not even getting there, right? We're not even getting to that piece. So this is really not a great example, right? Because otherwise, we would have an example where we're opening and closing using AJAX, right? So again, it's what you search for. If you're going to fix this thing, it's not with JavaScript, but let's say we use AJAX. Yes?
I still don't understand what exactly we're trying to do. Are we trying to read from XML and display in HTML?
Yes.
Or vice versa?
No, read.
Read from XML?
So here's the AJAX XML example, right? All right, a little bit bigger, right? We've got our XML. Here's their onReady state change. XML HTTP.onReady state change is this anonymous function. This is exactly what we've done. Here's our text. We're using this border and everything else, right? And if you notice, it says this checks for IE7 and blah, blah. We don't care about that at all, right? We've created our variable XML HTTP, right? And this is inside this function load XML doc, right? And this function takes a URL of where our what we're reading. Now we might change our function to get that. Maybe we'll change our function like that. But at the end of the day, it looks like we do the same thing. Here's our onReady state change with an anonymous function. This is a good example of what we're trying to do, right? Here's our texts that we're basically combining, right? And we're traversing the nodes by using this get elements by tag name. And look, here's what we do right at the bottom of our code. And that's what I was thinking. We do our open and send request right at the bottom of our code. Did we do it at the bottom of our code? No. Our bottom of our code is from this curly brace all the way to this curly brace. From this curly brace goes to here, right, to the next one, the next level, which is this one. So what we've done, this XML onReady state change, is where we've got it inside, where it should be outside of that onReady state change, because the event handler is trying to open up our file when it should be the other way around. Our open triggers our event handler to function. Otherwise, it'll never function because, sure, our onReady state change is an event handler. We're listening for the file to open, but it never is going to happen because our open statement and our send is inside of our curly braces, and that's probably the issue. So let's check that out. Let's see what I'm talking about. So here, if you notice this curly brace here, this curly brace is here, our event handler. And I've put my open and send inside my event handler. So I'm listening for something that's never going to happen. These two things has got to kick off at the bottom of our file, or bottom of our function right here. Then it'll get here for sure. Otherwise, if we check to see if the state is ready, it'll never come here. Right? Let's try that. And then we refresh to see if that works. Now we're reading from our local file, right? And then just refresh to make sure that it's correct. Now we should be getting an error, because before we weren't doing it. Let's see if we're getting any kind of, this is what I wanted, right? It says local system team.xml. We can't access this team.xml thing. It went here and we had a problem. The server responded with a status of 404, not found. That's a good error. We can deal with that error, right? The other errors we were getting were we weren't getting the right error before. Okay, now this is good. And I told you before why this is the case. This is the case when we do, because here, remember, our JavaScript is loaded at the same level, right, as our file, right? So we're looking into, let me just stop debugging for a second. We're looking into our scripts, right? From the index.html level. We're looking into our scripts to access our team, and this is not right. We would have to recode this thing. If we wanted to go here inside of our scripts, then this app.js would have to be scripts like this, if this is where we wanted it, .team.xml, because this is where it exists. Even though our app.js is in our scripts, it's being loaded into our HTML file at the HTML level, but this is not. Let's try that out. So our pathing is the funky part, right? Let's see how it says connecting. Oh yeah, I should start debugging. How about that? If it doesn't debug, it doesn't matter. Oh, this is good. We got some funky things going on. We didn't form our statement correctly, but we've got, this is good. This is a good thing. This is what we did. So we actually read the file, right? Okay, but this is, we're halfway there. We can fix this. This is just creating our documents, right, the way we want. This is good, right, because Tom is our thing, professor, blah, 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 whatever, and we notice we're not getting the breakpoints for everything else we need. This is okay, right? Because it's not well-formed HTML. That's why it's happening this way. Now what we need to do is, first of all, I don't want to read my document in apps.js. I don't want to read it from here. And you know what? I don't even want to hard code it. Because hard coding it is a bad thing, right? Because if I hard code it, that means I can never change this. If I want to read another document, I would have to do something else. So let's put it in here. Let's take in our URL up here in our function, all right? And here our our team, we're just going to change this to URL for now. Let's just try this out, right? Here's our URL, right? Because that's our URL. And then inside our index, right? I'm going to put inside of our URL, this is where we're going to say something like, and this is where it's difficult. Can I do this for here in our scripts? I'm going to ask you this question. Can I do that here? Can I put another, you know, la la la, and then another one like these? Is that legal? And the answer is no, it's not, which is an issue. So yes, I'd like to do this here in our app.js, put a URL in here, but for now, we're just going to define it up here as a variable. So our URL, var URL, we can change that later on. It's a global variable, and we're going to make it so that our our path name is content / team.xml, like we want, because that's where our content's going to be for all of our content for our HTML. Okay, so there's a couple of issues. BR, right, seems to be causing an issue. We're trying to get element by ID, right, and we're adding it into this HTML, and we're displaying it as a value here, right? That's what we're trying to do, and it's going in the right place, but it's not forming properly. Why? Because if I go here and I put in a BR, I need this, right? If I don't have this, you know, sometimes what happens is that we don't understand what this means. So I've got to go back in here and change all these BRs, right, to a /. It's got to be a / like that, right? Because that's the proper way of doing a line break, right? Why am I doing that? I'm copying instead of pasting. Guys, I know this is like watching paint peel, but in order for you to understand what we're doing here, right? For the first time, when we use Ajax to read a file, we're just not using JavaScript. I did it a couple times now. We're not just using JavaScript to read the file, because remember I told you, JavaScript would give us cross-scripting errors. You get a security error that wouldn't allow you to do it. But when we use Ajax, Ajax allows us to read files locally from our system, not a problem. Now writing files is a whole other business, which we'll try and get into tomorrow. Let me just try this out now and make sure it works. It's not the right path. Are you sure? Worst case, we're going to leave it the way it is, Team XML. How come? Here's the thing. So var content, right? Team XML is correct, right? That's the proper URL.
Don't you need like 2 dots at the beginning?
I do. Well, but we didn't need it for over a year, right? For Team XML, I needed it before. If I was going to do scripts, how about this? I'll go back to scripts. Remember that worked. We know that when we put URL down here for scripts, that worked. So let's try this for a second. So I want to see if that makes any sense, right? Because that worked before, but now we're getting that error. It's a different error now we're getting. And let's try and see what our JavaScript tools are telling us, right? We're not getting that resource. We're not giving it the proper pathing, right?
Is it because of the stating URL and the init function?
We're not passing it or ever calling init, right? Because we're passing it in here, it doesn't know what it is, right? If I took this out for now, because there is trying to pass a parameter inside of our function that's never called that way, we called it without a parameter. And remember, JavaScript doesn't need parameters for functions, right? Just doesn't, right? Now if I reload, right? This is good. Oh, we got the slash, but still not interpreting it as XML. It's just taking that raw data and sending it down, right? Why? Because we're using jQuery, folks, and we're not using JavaScript the way it was meant to be used. Because what we're doing is replacing the content, but we're not document.writing in there and creating a line break. We're trying to be smart, and we're actually being dumb. I hate to say it that way, but that's the way it is. Because this line here, which we tried to use with jQuery, it's correct. It's correct. But what's happening is, because this HTML is taking this value, but it's replacing everything verbatim. It's not writing. It's not document.writing, right? Which is what we really want to do. We want to write inside there, create new content, right?
So could you put like /n?
Let me just change this to content, just to test it with like this for a second and rerun it. 2 more minutes and I'll let you guys go. So that works. We know that that's okay. So we're writing the right thing. Okay, so that's for sure is what we want. We don't want the other because it's reading in the right level now. And now what we want is this. If we go to the original PowerPoint, right in here, it shows us here, document.get element team inner HTML is what we want to hit with this, which is like this, right? Document.get element by ID, right? Team, which is what we're looking at, and then we're targeting our inner HTML, right, which is equal to HTML. HTML. Let me just comment this thing out for now to show you that if there's any difference between this and this. All right, and we'll refresh because this is exactly what we wrote before. Right, two different things. We think it's the same, but we're using the wrong function for jQuery. And now, of course, as you notice, there's no styling. This is where we go in and style everything from here. But we're pulling the document. The data isn't coming from this XML document, this HTML document. Just to recap, the data for this AJAX, we're using AJAX to pull data. I'm just going to delete this for a second, and I'll run it one last time before, and I'll forward it up to thing. We're reading this content team.xml file, right? This team.xml file, which is this. That's what we're reading, and we're taking that information and plopping it inside of our HTML file. That's what we're doing, and we're doing it with AJAX. Okay, just to end off, so again, please read your, I've already put the document up online for you to read ahead. If you don't mind reading ahead for tomorrow, we're going to continue to talk about AJAX and jQuery Mobile. We're going to hit that tomorrow. AJAX to read XML document. We're going to do the same thing with JSON.
Are you going to get
Marks?
small assignments for this?
I could, if you'd like me to. I could give you small assignments. But the bigger one is going to be when we use our stuff for our jQuery Mobile. When we go
For the
into,
bigger one,
you don't need this,
yeah,
right?
I know that.
I want you guys to see it so you understand how AJAX works. This is why we're doing this, right? I'm probably never going to ask you to read a file right now from AJAX at this level. But next second half, when we go to the second half, when we start using Angular and everything else, then we'll be able to do from there. Okay, so you've got all the documents. We'll go in there.